Hey Doc, I am back with another wonderful guest. I have Dr. Jade Norris here with me. She is a family medicine physician and obesity medicine physician, and she is a mom just like you. Welcome, Dr. Jade.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to meet this happen. So, start off by telling me how many children do you have and how old are they?
Yes, so I have 2 daughters. I have a bonus daughter who's, you know, in her 30s, but I have 2 little ones. So Ava is 5, and she likes to tell me 5.5 now, and then Aaliyah is 3.
Oh, I love that name. Nice. All right, so I didn't realize your kids were so young. Okay, good. So you're in it.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm in the thick of it.
Tell me first of all, how long have you been married?
Yeah, my husband and I were coming up on our 9th year of marriage this year.
Nice. Okay, we're pretty
Mhm.
close there. We're 7. Oh, we were 7 last year. All right, how did y'all meet?
Yeah, we met at the grocery store. It's actually pretty funny. We were in Illinois at the grocery store we met at a few years ago, and I said, "Let's just reenact it." And we reenacted it and recorded it, and it went viral. So it was funny. So apparently, meeting at the grocery store is pretty funny. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
the grocery store.
Okay, what a meet cute. All right, so tell me how, because literally only see that stuff on TV. So reenact it for me again. Like, what exactly happened?
What's funny is we had 2 different scenarios of what happened. I
Of
actually saw
course.
him first. So I had just moved to so I was in my 2nd year of med school, and our med school at Southern Illinois was split campuses where your first year was in Carbondale, Illinois, and then your 2nd year you had to move up to the capital in Springfield, Illinois. So it was my first week in the new city, my 2nd year a residence or med school. And so I asked all my classmates ahead of me, where do you guys go to church? And so they told me, oh, we all go to this specific church. So I went there that Sunday and I saw him. I looked around, I'm new to the city. So I'm like, my head's on a swivel. I'm single, med student. And I didn't see anything in the audience, but I was like, oh, and I look on stage and I saw one of the ministers that was on the piano. And I was like, ooh, okay. But I just assumed, he was a little older than me, and I assumed he was probably married, And so my mind didn't go any further than that. I just was like, that's the only attractive person I see in the church today. And then I went grocery shopping after church, and I happened to see him in the produce section, or I think it was he was standing by the salmon, and I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, Jade, he's married. He's getting some dinner for his wife and his kids, So I just, again, kept going. And then he came up and introduced himself to me a little bit later in the produce section. But what I didn't know from his perspective was his cousin was there grocery shopping and was like, "You gotta get to the grocery store. There's a new one in town. You gotta see her." And then he gets to the grocery store. His phone goes dead. He can't find his cousin. He doesn't know who his cousin called him up there for. And then he said he saw me and was like, "Oh, I don't know who he called me up here for, but
Right.
she's the one." And then later we all laughed and found out that I was the one his cousin had called him to the grocery store for. So it was like a TV show, all these different scenarios that happened. So yeah, very, very funny.
Wow, that is probably one of the best stories I've ever heard about people. That is a meet cute. If hey, somebody call Hollywood, that is it. I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Okay, that is wonderful. All right. So how long were y'all married before you had kids?
Yeah, so we were married 2 years before we had the mhm.
Okay. And so did you get married in med school? Give me the timeline of when all this happened.
Yeah, so we met my 2nd year of med school. We got married my 4th year of med school. So we dated for 2 years and then got married. And then we had Ava my intern year of residency.
Woo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, it was just, I mean, how amazing could it be? It was the pandemic, you're pregnant, it's COVID, you're an intern, just all the
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So were you how old? I hope you don't mind me asking. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 35.
Okay. So in your mind, was that around the time when you wanted to have your first, or did you have different ideas?
I hoped to have my children, like however many that would be total before 35, and I just had now we call it geriatric pregnancy, right? I had that in mind, so it was like, it'd be nice to be done having kids by 35, so
Okay.
yeah, and then once I'm the kind of person, like, I was trying to get back to my healthy weight, so I'm like, "Look, if we're gonna do it, let's have them back to
Right.
back and get this whole thing over with." So yeah, it worked out the way I'm thankful with the way it worked
Yeah.
out in the timeline, yeah.
Yeah, we are very similar. I was like, I'm not let's get this done.
Yes.
I was like, I cannot
I
do
was
this
like, "You've
again.
got a five-year time span now."
That's hilarious. All right. So it wasn't the reason I asked is because intern year. I was wondering if it was a matter of, well, I really don't want to do this through an intern year, but I'm on a timeline, or was it just whenever it happened?
Yeah, at that point, it was whenever it happened, and, transparently, we went off birth control, so we're like, "W whenever it happens, if it happens during intern year, fine," but we were hoping to have children during residency, to start having
Mhm.
our family during residency.
Oh,
So, yeah.
that's interesting. Tell me more about that because that's not anything I've heard before.
Well, after residency, it would be pushing towards 35, so it's
Ah,
like
it was the age.
yeah, it was the age, and then, then I would be fresh into my career, and with that be the thing about it, I just realized there's never a good time. Med school wasn't a good time. Residency isn't a great time, and post-residency, when you're a new attending, especially if you are a contract, I went private practice straight from residency, but most people don't. So then, you're hired to a new position, and then you're gonna take off, so it's just never a good time, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to make it your timeline. But it ended up being great. It was a blur for me. Like, I look back and people asked, how was I pregnant intern year during the pandemic? I really don't half remember. You just put your head down, you do it. I would vomit on rounds and get right back to it. You just do it. And
Yeah.
that's it.
I had a pandemic baby as well, and I don't even remember. Yeah, it was just a blur.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had a lot of my maternity leave during the pandemic, and I was like a real germaphobe in the beginning. So I was just like, I'm so glad I am not in the hospital right now.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what was going on. It was truly a blessing. Even though I felt at the moment it was terrible because we were alone. So how did you deal with that? The kind of isolation of the pandemic and the pregnancy and postpartum.
I wasn't isolated. I think that's the problem. I was a frontliner resident, right? So I was
Oh,
in the emergency room. I was in the ICU. I'm giving the patients bad news. I'm resuscitating patients while I'm 9 months pregnant. Like, yeah, I was not. I think it would have been nice to be a little bit isolated, but they're like, no, we need all hands on deck. Holding the pager, delivering babies. So I was in the thick of it. I didn't really get to experience too much of the isolation component. My husband, he's has his own career, so he went remote. He now works remote in general, but his position was remote, so he was fine. He was at the
yeah.
basketball court, right? But for me, it was like the main thing was I was just praying not to obviously get COVID while I was pregnant, not to give it to my husband. And so that was the main thing. I would get fully undressed before I came, like in the garage, and drop my clothes off at the laundry and then go straight to the shower. So more of those precautions, and then just praying I wouldn't, get COVID while pregnant, especially that third trimester, just being like, oh, I don't want to be one of these pregnant people. This is my first baby, to the thought of my husband not being able to be in the room and all those things. So I'm thankful I never, got COVID during the
Yeah.
pandemic. So that was my main concern, and giving it to my family, yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question is if you got it. Because I remember at the time we had a lot of, because I'm OBGYN, so we had a lot of people miscarrying. We had a lot
Mm,
of preterm labor.
yeah.
It was like at the very beginning when nobody had any kind of immunity and nobody knew what was going on. We were seeing a lot, but not that we can say, yes, this is what's causing it, but it was very obvious that there was some kind of correlation. So I'm glad that you did not experience that. And let me tell you, I had COVID during pregnancy after vaccination and stuff, and it was not pleasant. So
Mm,
I'm very happy that you did not have it because it was pretty bad. So, okay, that is scary. I can't believe that that's what you had to do, but luckily everything was fine. Was your actual birth fine? Any issues
yeah.
surrounding that?
No, no. Only issue is she just didn't wanna come out, but, we just waited it out 3 days, and eventually she came out. So,
Okay.
yeah, no, it was a really blessed delivery.
Yeah.
I always tell people my hardest part was, like, trying to figure out breastfeeding after, but the labor was very
It was
smooth
fine.
for us once she came out, yeah.
Nice. All right. So tell me about that. How was your breastfeeding journey?
It's so funny. I look back as a resident when they tell you, they give you all the lines to say like, "Oh, tell the moms breast is best," and just connect them with the breastfeeding lactation specialist, and they'll be fine, and encourage this and encourage that. Yeah, I'm like, I didn't know what I was talking about. It was the hardest part of my journey. Outside of the nausea in first trimester and the heartburn in third trimester, the the breastfeeding was the hardest part. I wasn't a good producer. I tried all the things, lots of water, all the things they say to drink and to do, and none of it really made me produce very much, and it was very painful for me. I was exclusively pumping for a while. That was very painful for me. I tried all the different flange sizes and all the things they told you to do, uh, ointments, whatever. It all hurt, and I didn't produce a lot. I would have preferred to put her to the breast, but for whatever reason, she would scream bloody murder if I put my nipple anywhere near her face. And so it was so bizarre. So she did not want the breast at all, but she would take the bottle, but I didn't produce. So, I had in my mind that I wanted to be one of these moms with like the freezer full of, deep freezer full of milk, and that just wasn't my story. So that was frustrating, and I just was like, "Oh, what's happening?" And then my second baby, I just gave myself grace, and I was like, "Okay, I was formula fed. My first daughter was formula fed, try to give her some of the early breast milk so she can get the colostrum, and then from there, just release yourself of the pressure if you're not a good producer." And I wasn't second time around either. And then at that point, second baby gets the laid back mom. So I was like, here's your bottle, but it was tough for me with the first baby because I really had in mind that I was gonna be this overproducing deep freezer milk mom.
Yeah, I mean, that really spoke to me. Even before I had kids, as an OBGYN, I felt very strongly about how we, as people who take care of women who have babies, talk about breastfeeding and counsel about it, and the dream that we made up that it is the best thing, and this is what makes you a good mom. And it always bothered me. And then I had mine, and the kind of pressure and the pain, like you mentioned, that I put on myself. I just feel like it is unhealthy. Especially as physicians, we have enough pressure that we're putting on ourselves. We do not need this extra thing. And like you said, I was also formula fed, and I am the picture of perfection. So
That's right.
formula is fine. Um, yeah. So I want to ask, in the first experience, how did you handle all of the pain, and especially when you said when she came to latch, she screamed, like, what was going through your mind at that point?
Um, Yeah, now knowing my daughter's personality now, it just makes all the sense. It's like she's gonna do things her own way in general. So she gets that from her mom, I guess. But yeah, she just didn't like it. And I was okay with that. But then my default after that was, well, then that's fine. I'll just, pump, then I can do it anywhere, and I'm gonna have to go to work anyway at some point. So pumping is gonna be my lifestyle anyway. So I would have been fine with it had I been an easily, a pumping mom that worked easily, but that part not working well, and my production, just being so like just sitting there in pain for 20 minutes at a time, and then it being like an ounce or two was just like, and then I'm watching these videos, these YouTube videos, and it's like they have a full bottle after, right? So it's just the first time around, it was tough for me to let go of that uh, idea because I had myself on a strict schedule. I had bag and my equipment everywhere. Like I said, I was a resident, so I would take it with me to rounds. It's embarrassing looking back, but like we had open laptops and tables. All the residents, all worked openly. And I would be sitting there between patients out in public with a little wrap over me. But people would walk by and they'd be like, "What's that sound?" And I'm like, "It's my pump." And, I'm like doing notes, and it was what it was. I was like, I'm sticking to my schedule.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the best I can. And looking back, I didn't have to put all that pressure on myself, and I figured it out the second time around, but at first, I
Yeah.
just was like I was a new mom, and I just was
Yeah.
like, I don't wanna put that stuff in her body if my
That
body."
poison.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you telling this story will help another new mom not put themselves through that, because you say it's that doesn't sound embarrassing to me. It's just boobs, whatever. You could be able to pump wherever, but the schedule and the pressure, and I cannot stand pumping. Exclusive pumpers, all the respect to you, because if that was my story, I would have just stopped.
Yeah.
There's just like no way, because you're
Mhm.
right. It's painful. It's a chore. And if you weren't getting enough, it's just like, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you gave yourself grace for the second time around, because that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. The embarrassing part of the story was just that I didn't have to do that. Like, I could have released myself from that schedule far earlier on. Like, the signs of me not being a producer were there much earlier, but I just
yeah.
went for months, of still, like, sticking to
Yeah.
it.
I
Like,
think
yeah.
that's common, because we're physicians. We're like, I'm gonna solve this problem.
Yeah.
Like, you were on YouTube. I don't know, were you in Dr. Milk? Have you heard of that group?
No.
No, okay. It's this intense Facebook group of
Oh.
physicians about breastfeeding.
Oh,
It's
no.
intense. It's a good thing you went in there.
No.
I tell you that group will break you, man.
Oh, man.
Anyway, all respect to the people who are in Dr. Milk and who run that group. They have a lot of good resources, but I just felt that it was overwhelming.
Mm,
Especially for somebody like you said who is not a producer. They have all the tips and stuff, and maybe it may have prolonged all of the trying.
mhm.
Um, but I do respect everybody's journey if they are a low producer. That was not mine. And I know that need to give your baby the best. And as doctors, we're like, okay, this is the best. So this is what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. How long did you get off in residency?
Yeah, so they gave me, I believe so they followed the California law, and at that time they would give me up to 6 months. And
Oh,
so I chose to do 4 months. And so for Ava, I took off 4 months, but I'm trying to remember, it was like a certain time frame that you were paid. I may be quoting it wrong because it's been a while. So I think I was
yeah.
paid up to 6 weeks. And
Yeah.
then, after that, it was like I had to supplement, with just my husband's income. But for
Yeah.
us, we took 4 months and we like, well, yeah, we'll supplement. And then I had to tack on to my training whatever I took off. So then I had a delayed,
Hmm.
graduation 4 months later.
So tell me about that decision, because most people I talk to say, I don't want to graduate late. So how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, it's interesting because during residency, I figured out I wasn't going to take an employed position and I was going to go straight into entrepreneurship and we were going to try to open a direct primary care practice or not try. That's our
Yeah.
plan and what we did. And so I wasn't in a rush, because I wasn't starting a job. I knew I was going to get a part time urgent care job, but that wasn't going to go anywhere. And at that time she would have been 3, right? I ended up being pregnant in my 3rd year too when I graduated, but, yeah, so for her, like, I wasn't in a rush after because I was going into entrepreneurship after was the plan.
Yeah. And I want to come back to that, because, I have a special place in my heart for entrepreneurs. But for any of this, either pregnancy, did you all have help?
No, no, we didn't. So we were on our own in California during residency, and so we didn't have family. Carlos's family is in Illinois, my family's in Las Vegas. So we didn't. I think that was the hardest part. Was it was just we found a good daycare, and that was it. And we weren't. I didn't know my resident colleagues well enough to like leave my first baby with them. You know what I mean? So no, it was just the 2 of us and the daycare, and that was really it.
That sounds rough.
It was rough, it was rough, yeah.
And was it ever an option for family to come?
At the time so my mom's retired now, but at the time, she was not yet retired, so she couldn't come. She did come for a little bit because she was a teacher, so my baby
Yeah.
was born in the summer, so she had, like, a few weeks off, like, 4 weeks off to stay with us, uh But but I don't remember her staying. I think she just came back and forth more
Yeah.
often during that time. So, it wasn't an option. All of our family worked at that time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That is rough, man. Especially in residency. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine.
Yep.
Oof. All right. So tell me, how is it that during residency, you were like, you know what? Not only am I going to open a private practice, I'm going to open a DPC practice. Tell me, how did that thought enter your brain?
Yeah, so as a child, I started saying I wanted to be a doctor at 4 years old, and my exposure to medicine was my pediatrician in Chicago. He had his own private pediatrics practice. So my first exposure to medicine was like a doctor that knew you really well. Uh, it was the same doctor every time, and he owned the practice. So when I started saying I wanted to be a doctor as a little girl, I was like, I'm going to have my own practice too. So that was just what I saw, and so what I wanted. And then, of course, through my training, right? High school, undergrad, med school, it was kind of trained out of me like, oh, you can't, oh, you can't do that anymore. That was back in the day. Private practices have been bought up by big, companies. And so then I thought, oh, I guess I can't have my own practice because that was how it was back in the day. That doesn't happen anymore. So I kind of went away from that idea, but my desire and how I wanted to practice medicine as far as like having a good relationship, being the community doctor, my patients knowing me and me knowing them, me being easy to access, like that desire was still there, even if I couldn't own my own practice. So that never left. So then during residency, it was just my second year. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet or what my position was going to look like after. I just knew my plan was to come back home and practice in Vegas. But just during lunch one day, one of my attending second year said, well, what do you want to do after? Or, other people were signing contracts already. And I just explained literally that to her. Well, I want to be the community doctor. I want people to be able to reach me. I want to spend time with them. I want to know them. I want to have less patients so I can take good care of them. And I was like, but I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. And then she was like, well, it sounds like you might be interested in something called direct primary care. And I was like, what's that? And so I just went home and I like Googled it. At the time, they had some of the old conferences on YouTube. So I found those in the conferences. They mentioned some books, so I bought those from Amazon. And then in the conferences, they mentioned some physician DPC Facebook groups, so I joined those. And then it opened this whole community up to me that I had knew nothing about. I started following the different docs on social media, and then I found several of them that had started their practices straight from residency. So then I followed their journey. I messaged them. I visited their practices. They became my like unofficial mentors. I met them at the conferences. And so, yeah, I just dove into the whole DPC world. And once I found out other people did it straight from residency, that was pretty much it for me. I'm like, well, if it's been done, I can do it.
Right.
And I just needed to know it's been done. And so, yeah, and then it was just on from there on, okay, well, my husband and I getting on the same page, being in agreement, because that was a big deal. Like, he's been on this journey with me. And it's like now up to the point where you're supposed to finally start making some money. You want to become an entrepreneur. So we had to get on the same page, and he got educated on it and agreed eventually, like, okay, yeah, this is the right fit for our family. And from there it was on like, okay, what do we need to do? Step 1, step 2,
Yeah.
step 3, and prayer.
That is amazing. I have so many questions. Let me get my pencil down. So I think the most impressive part is he's straight from residency. Because I know a lot of DPC docs because, I'm in entrepreneurship, physician entrepreneurship, and I love it. I thought I was going to open a practice. And if I was, it was going to be a DPC or a DSC because I'm OB.
Mhm.
But that leap from residency is very, very impressive. And I just wanted to take a minute to commend you for doing it and for just needing the fact that it had been done because a lot of people know that it has been done and they're still like, ooh, no. So that is very commendable and impressive. So just
Uh,
want to make sure that everybody knows that in case they missed it, that
no,
this was straight out of residency.
I appreciate that. For whatever reason in my mind, I feel like it's easier straight from residency, in a lot of ways. And I say that to say mostly the financial piece, right?
Mm,
Because established physicians have an established attending physician lifestyle. They've already
yeah,
upgraded their lifestyle. For me, I'm like, I'm coming out of residency. I'm like, okay,
right,
anything over this is
right.
gravy. So, I was, we had a no loan, very low overhead start. And I just saved a little bit of my residency income to start the practice. And then I took on 10 shifts per month at urgent care. And then as the practice grew, I peeled away one urgent care shift at a time. And so from the start, having 10 urgent care shifts was already double what I
Like,
was making as a
yeah,
resident, right? And so I'm like, okay, we're already ahead of the game. And it was just building from there. So in that regard, the financial regard, I
yeah,
think doing it established is more difficult. But of course, from the confidence and skill level, I can see the opposite, right? Like, oh, you're doing it straight from training. But I'm like, well, having the urgent care position where I'm running this corporation's urgent care by myself.
right.
Oh, and supervising nurse practitioners and
Oh,
PAs.
wow.
And I'm
Yeah.
doing they're expecting me to do that straight from residency. So why
Right.
am I so scared to do it for myself? So yeah, it was really the mindset from there.
Yeah. I hope y'all are listening, man, because she is dropping some gems. And let me tell you, just in terms of the financial aspect, like that's because I used to follow White Coat Investor when I just got out of residency, and that really set me up well and set me up to be able to do some of the stuff I'm doing right now. And one of the things he says is to live like a resident, and so that's what you did. And it is really good advice. I don't agree with everything he says, but that was definitely some good advice because, like you said, you just upgrade to this lifestyle that is really at the top of your salary for most people. And then it becomes unsustainable. Whole physicians living paycheck to paycheck and all this other stuff. So that seemed like a very good move. And I'm assuming your practice is thriving because I see you all over social media
Yeah,
and
we
stuff.
we've done well. The biggest thing is that we kept our overhead low.
Yeah.
That was the smartest thing that we did. I didn't go take out a big bank loan right away on day one. I didn't get like a lavish office. We got a
Yeah.
one-room suite. DPC is very simple. It's
Yeah.
about you and the patient. And so we
Right.
kept the model super low overhead. So we were profitable very early.
Yeah.
And then we brought on team and we even brought on a lean team really smart. We brought on people part-time and remote and just ways
Mm.
to really continue to keep the overhead low as we grew. So yeah, it's worked well by being strategic.
Strategic, smart, all those things, because people have this weird misconception about DPC that it cannot be profitable and it cannot do this and do that. And dealing with insurance is expensive. Like you need all of this extra stuff. Your overhead automatically becomes so high. It's inherent in DPC that your overhead is low. And then, of course, you make smart decisions to keep it as low as possible. So that is amazing. I can't even. Talking about entrepreneurship makes me very excited. So I'm trying to
Same.
like stay focused. But
Same.
the one thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is the conversation with your husband. I literally just recorded an episode about talking to your partner about like dream life and different things and having those difficult conversations. And you alluded to the fact that it wasn't just like 100%, yes, I'm on board. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, mostly because neither of us had any idea what direct primary care was. And so I went on YouTube and started looking at conferences and educating myself. And then all of a sudden I'm on fire for this new random thing.
Right.
And he's like, never heard of it. What is that? What do you mean you're not signing that contract? So it was more of like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And so it involved us both getting educated together. There was a podcast, My DPC Story. So we both started listening to those episodes together. We started, when I would see something and it would be like a spouse giving their feedback on being the spouse of a DPC doc, I would send him that. So we really started investigating it as a couple. And learning entrepreneurship. Well, what is his role? Okay, what is that going to look like? What is the business plan? And how we want it to be successful. If we're going to do it, we want to be successful. So what does that look like? So it was mostly the education component, and then we're people of faith, so we had to pray on it, and God confirmed for him, like, yeah, this is what your family's called to do. And so that's really what we needed, was to just be in agreement, to be prayerful, and to be educated, but have a specific plan on and strategy that made
Yeah.
sense for the likelihood of success.
Right. I love that. And this can be used for any situation, anything that you are dreaming about doing, involving your partner early, because a lot of times you have these ideas, these desires inside, it's ruminating in your mind for however long. And then when it finally comes out, the person is like, what? And it may come off as not supportive or whatever, but you've had time to digest this, right?
Mhm.
And dropping it on them can sometimes be a little bit shocking. So it's always better to just, learn together, as you said, and really have the vision together because y'all are together. So you might as well be doing it as a team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love your story.
Same.
Makes me so excited and happy. Right. So if you had any piece of advice for another physician mom out there, a physician entrepreneur or otherwise, what would it be?
It would really be about thinking about what they're called to do, like what brings them joy, the reason they're put here, and what needs to happen to make that happen? I really try to think about not if, but how. So it's not if it can happen, but like, how can that happen? Like, oh, I need help in the house. Like, okay, it doesn't look like that can happen on paper, but how can that happen? How can I get the help I need around the house? How can I start the business? How can I be have a employed position that's really fulfilling? How can that look? And so I really think of the not if, but how mindset, and for me being prayerful and really building my DPC around my dream life, not my dream life, trying to fit that into the peg hole of how anyone else's DPC looks. So, yeah, that I'm really just about wellness and fulfillment and doing what I'm called to do in my purpose. And anything I dream or desire to do, figuring how that can happen and not having limiting beliefs.
I just want to highlight my favorite part of what you said is fitting your DPC around your dream life. Because especially with entrepreneurship, and even if you're employed, you try to fit your life around this job, this thing that we have worked so hard for that seems to be all encompassing and the most important thing, but it really isn't. Like COVID taught us that, the rise of mid levels and like all those things are telling us do not make this the center of your world.
Yeah,
Make your life the center, you, your family, the things that you want, the center, and then focus everything else around it, especially if you're
absolutely.
an entrepreneur. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Dr. J, this was amazing. I'm so glad that you were able to come on and share your story and all of your amazing advice. And y'all listen to her, even if you do not want to start at DPC, which you should. That's how we're going to take back medicine. Even if you don't, these things that she's talking about, most of the things that I talk about on this podcast can be transferred no matter what you're doing. If you're employed, if you're married, if you're single, these are like life lessons. Like Dr. J just improved your life right now, right? So thank you so much for joining and sharing everything with Stethoscopes and Strollers family.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. All right. So, Doc, I will see you next time on another episode of Stethoscopes and Strollers. Bye.